Hey, this is Scene Detail. I'm Chris. This is MMA for you. I'm going to be doing my post-fight analysis for UFC on Fox 8. Overall, it was actually a pretty good card. I mean, despite all the injuries that happened, that, it really reshuffled the card. Like, Robbie Lawler is supposed to fight like Safadine and Sayar, and now he has to fight Voelker. That Liz Carmouche is supposed to fight Misha Tate. I know the undercard, if I'm not mistaken, got changed up along the way as well. But overall, it was a good card. A good amount of finishes by sub and knockout. Not too many boring fights per se. Overall, I did like the card. I thought it was good considering that on paper it probably wasn't the best card. MacDonald Ellenberger was, as far as the divisional relevance, that's probably one of the more important fights on there. Of course, the main event. Of course, no one knew who John Moraga was. So that was one thing that was a bit troubling with the main event coming into the event. As far as the bonuses go, Demetrius Johnson got submission of the night, Guillard got knockout of the night, and Ed Herman versus Trevor Smith got fight of the night. As far as my picks go, I got 8 out of 12. So yeah, let's get started. Okay, Demetrius Johnson beat John Moraga by armbar in the 5th round. With this fight and also the Chiesa versus Masel fight, and even Andrade versus Carmouche, it's just kind of a case of too much too soon. In hindsight, it's a little too much too soon for Moraga to fight a guy like Demetrius Johnson. Moraga's a good talent, despite the fact that he got taken down just at will by Johnson and more or less just outstruck. He is a good fighter. He's a good wrestler, heavy-handed for a 125er. But, Mighty Mouse, this was the most dominant performance I've ever seen him in. His takedowns were just lightning fast. His guard passing was really good. Every time that Moraga opened up his guard, Demetrius Johnson was always able to pass the side mount. Just always. You watch the fight, guard open, pass the side mount. Or I think he may have passed a half guard at one time, but for the most part, he was able to pass that guard pretty easily. It makes it a learning experience for Moraga because, the fact that he was able to do it so easily makes me think that he probably needs a lot more work off his back. And once again, it goes back to just a little too much too soon. This is actually the first finish in the UFC, not under Zuffa, because in the WEC, Demetrius Johnson managed to guillotine. Guy trains out of Jackson. The Angel of Death. Name escapes me right now, but he was able to get a finish in the WEC. And this is his first finish in the UFC, and it was a good finish, really emphatic. He was in side mount, was working for a Kimura, and he managed to switch it to an armbar. It's really nice stuff. Just really good technique from Demetrius Johnson, and he just pretty much, besides there was one good punch that Moraga was able to hit on Johnson, but otherwise Johnson dominated the stand-up and the wrestling and the ground. He just dominated pretty much everywhere. So as who Johnson's fight next, we got John Lineker. He's getting a good win streak going on, heavy-handed guy, pushes forward, really good chin. Don't think he has much in terms of the wrestling against Demetrius Johnson. And of course, there's also Joseph Benavidez, who is just kicking ass and taking names, especially under the guidance of Dwayne Bang Ludwig with Team Alpha Male. So those two guys would definitely be good next challenges for Johnson. Johnson already beat Benavidez, but it was a relatively close fight as well. So I think enough's changed that a rematch wouldn't be too bad. With Moraga, the division's kind of small. You can get the loser of, like, Iliard Santos versus, like, Ian McCall. If you want to give him, like, a John Dodson, you can do that, too. Okay, next one after that, Rory McDonald beat Jake Ellenberger by unanimous decision. There's a lot of different mindsets with this fight. It's not the most aesthetically pleasing. It's not an exciting fight, but at the same time, it's a very high-level fight. Considering what little was actually done in context. With Rory, there was footwork, a jab, and a couple kicks in there as well. I mean, there's more to it than that. I'm definitely simplifying here. Ellenberger was punching a lot of air, especially trying to get a counter left. Just punched a lot of air. But Roy just absolutely nullified anything that Ellenberger was able to do. Even in the third round when he got that takedown near the end, I saw it, man. Like, the thing with Ellenberger, his arm was on the mat. I was like, dude, he is open for a triangle. So he didn't get the triangle, but he actually managed to get an omoplata. And by the end of the round, it looks like Roy would have taken his back had the bell not sounded. It's not a great, it's not one of those, like, performances that's just like, wow, like, you see a finish, you're like, wow, I'm really impressed by this guy. But at the same time, I mean, it's just huge improvement. The utilization of a jab in mixed martial arts is still very underutilized. And guys out of Choice Sport definitely use it very well. The fact that Rory can do that with great success against a guy like Ellenberger says a lot about Rory and his improvement. He also looks really... Like, the more I watch him fight, the more I notice it's like, man, he's looking really big for welterweight. I'm assuming he's going to go to middleweight sooner rather than later. But it also poses an interesting question here because, like, Roy just beat, like, the number 4 guy. Is he the next contender for the winner of GSP versus Hendricks? And if GSP wins, he is a training partner of Rory McDonald. Will they fight each other? So, it's just one of those things where Rory's kind of in a holding pattern in a sense if he's not willing to fight GSP if GSP beats Hendricks. But, good improvement from Rory. Great just nullification of what the other guy was doing. Now with Ellenberger, there's a lot of fights. I mean, if you want to bring him lower down the ladder, you can get him the loser of, like, Matt Brown versus Mike Pyle. Or, if you want to give him some higher up, you can give him the loser of Hendricks versus GSP. If it's Hendricks versus Ellenberger, that'd be a pretty cool fight. But yeah, it's kind of weird with McDonald just because, like, I don't know if he's going to fight GSP, but you can't keep feeding him contenders either. It's like, are you going to give Rory McDonald, like, Eric Silva next? I think Silva might be fighting Stun Gun. But it's like, well, he can kill another contender if he's not going to fight GSP. That's if, maybe if you give these guys enough money, maybe they have an agreement to train at different gyms, they will fight each other. Because this is actually, before this fight happened, I mean, Ellenberger actually had a better resume. He beat Jake Shields, knocked him out. He knocked out Mike Pyle. He beat Diego Sanchez, and then he knocked out, like, Nate Marquardt. Rory McDonald's biggest wins were, like, Nate Diaz and BJ Penn and Mike Pyle. But personally, I thought that Ellenberger's resume before this fight was definitely better than McDonald's. But now, McDonald has that really solid, like, top 10 win without that asterisk. Like, BJ Penn's a great fighter, but, like, at welterweight and with his age now, I mean, he hasn't looked great. Nate Diaz, once again, he's kind of like, he's better as a lightweight than a welterweight. But, Rory now has that one big win. And I'm curious to see what they do next with him. to be perfectly honest, because like everyone calls him the future, and he shows it. I mean, he's a really good fighter. You know, doesn't have many weaknesses. Does most things right. You know, big for the weight class. And he's got really young. You know, he's got a lot going for him. So I'm curious to see what happens next with him. Okay, next fight after that, Robbie Lawler beat Bobby Voelker by a head kick in the second round. This was Lawler's best performance to date. I mean, yeah, it's Bobby Voelker, who's pretty much like a lesser version of Robbie Lawler. And I'm a fan of Bobby Voelker. You know, he's a super game opponent, always in the fight, tough to finish. You know, one thing I like about Robbie Lawler, one, he looks good at 170. He's not super muscular, and with this fight, you see a lot less brawling with him as well. You know, granted, it's easier to do that against Voelker, a guy like Voelker, but nonetheless, he's looking a lot more crisp. I think next they should give Lawler just Tarek Saffiedine. He's supposed to fight him originally, and you know, this was a really strong win for him, and Saffiedine is gonna need an opponent pretty soon. So Robbie Lawler works. Voelker, just more lower to mid tier in the division. You know, he has 2 losses in a row so far. I hope he doesn't get cut. He's a fun fighter. You know, I'd like to see him get one more fight. Okay, next fight I thought Liz Carmouche beat Jessica Andrade. I'm gonna call her Andrade by TKO in the second round. You know, this is also like kind of a case of like too much too soon for Jessica Andrade. She actually did pretty well. Considering she's like 21, she hasn't fought outside the U.S. It's first fight in the UFC. Her composure actually wasn't very bad. You know, it's just Carmouche was a better wrestler, better grappler, much bigger. You know, probably the better scrambler as well. This is a good win for Carmouche. First one she has over a fighter that doesn't have a losing record. And I think Carmouche should get like the winner of McMahon versus Kaufman. She's already fought Kaufman, but you know, rematch would be fine. Or another good opponent would be Alexis Davis. With Andrade, you know, maybe a Rosie Sexton. Loser of like Amanda Nunes versus Shayla Gaff. You can give her like Julie Kedzie. So there's fights for her for sure. Okay, now on the prelims, Jorge Masel beat Michael Chiesa by Darce choke. 4 minutes 59 seconds of the second round. This is another case of just like too much too soon for one of the fighters. Like it is just too much too soon for Michael Chiesa here. Going from Anton Kuvanen to like Jorge Masvidal. Masvidal is a really good fighter. I mean, he's mainly, you see a lot of stand up from him, but his ground game is, you know, is solid. He is solid wrestling, really good takedown defense, and his jiu-jitsu, as you can see in this fight, is not that bad considering he submitted a guy whose biggest strength really is jiu-jitsu, you know. Chiesa, he did manage to drop Masvidal, which surprised me, because the thing with Chiesa, he's in the fight and he's trying, you know, to utilize his stand-up, but you can tell it's still really sloppy. He did like a 1-2 front kick, and it just looked a bit awkward, you know. But he's still new, you know. He's 9-0. Now he's 9-1, you know. Still relatively new. I'm going to be honest, and this fight didn't really change my opinion. I'm not really too high on Chiesa as a prospect, to be perfectly honest with you. I think he'll be a solid, like, mid-tier guy, but I can't see him get too much farther ahead than that. He's not a natural athlete. Still has some awkward-looking striking. His wrestling's good. His back control is awesome, though. But, yeah. Just get more lower to mid-tier guys in the division. With Masvidal, like I said, solid fighter. It's hard to say who should fight next. If you want to give him someone tough, you always go with someone like a Gleison Tebow. He's always like good, like middle, upper mid guy that'll test prospects and whatnot. So Masvidal Tebow wouldn't be too bad. Give him like a Sam Stout. Another cool one would be Masvidal versus like James Krause. You also go with like Danny Castillo, Mountain Guillard, or even Crookshank. I mean, any of these four guys could potentially fight each other, and the losers could potentially fight each other, and it wouldn't be the worst matchmaking, to be perfectly honest with you. Okay, next right off that, Danny Castillo beat Tim Means by unanimous decision. Cassio, it's kind of how I thought the fight would turn out, because when Tim Means fought Jorge Masvidal, I noticed his takedown defense isn't that strong. Striking is good. He has really good knees. He's very tall and lanky. He's really hard to hit, but his takedown defense still needs a lot of work. And Castillo really managed in the first and second round to take advantage of that. Almost got definitely got hit hard by me by a couple strikes in the third round, though. Cassio's just one of those guys that's, he'll win a couple, lose one, win a couple, lose one, He is improving, he was able to hit a couple overhands on Tim Means. His wrestling's good. Solid top control as well. If you want to give him like Bobby Green, like he's originally supposed to fight, that'd be cool. And like I said, any of these four guys who won, Masvidal, Cassio, Guillard, Crookshank, if you want to match them up against each other, that would work as well. With Cassio, though, like I said, his prospects are a bit odd because he'll beat a couple guys, lose some Michael Johnson. Beat a couple guys, lose to Jacob Volkman, he's not in the UFC anymore, That's kind of his MO. He looks like he'll be a guy that's kind of stuck in like mid-tier purgatory, to be perfectly honest with you. With Means, this is 2 losses in a row. Tough to say what happens to him, and he missed weight. Not a good sign for a guy that to keep his job in the UFC, unfortunately. If he stays, he's a good prospect, actually. Still young, good finisher, good stand-up, but he definitely needs to work on his takedown defense. Okay, next fight that Mountain Guillard knocked out Mac Danzig in the second round. Good stuff from Guillard, against a solid opponent, too. Mac Danzig's always been a solid fighter, not a great fight, a good fighter, but not a great fighter. And Guillard, for the most part, was pretty much in control the whole fight, He'd hit a jab a lot of times, get a couple of good leg kicks. His hand, Mac Danzig didn't have much for his hand speed, and he couldn't really take him down. So it was just one of those good performances by Guillard. When Guillard finishes, especially by knockout, it's always a really emphatic knockout, whether it's a knee to the body or some like combination punches to the face, that just like knocks a guy out cold. That's the other thing too. He tends to knock guys out cold too. So Guillard, he doesn't look shot. Some fights he looks really sluggish. This one he looked really good. Like what I saw. The problem with Guillard, though, he has like top 10 potential. It's just that he's always been inconsistent. He has good takedown defense. When he does get taken down, he's shown in the past, sometimes and sometimes not, a good ability to get back to his feet when he is taken down. And his stand-up's really good. He has heavy hands. So that's the thing with Guillard. I mean, he has all the potential in the world, but he just lacks that consistency. As far as he should fight next, Masvidal, like I said, I think these four guys that are fighting in the undercard here kind of work for each other. Danzig, I think he lost to Gomi before this. He could be cut after this fight. It's hard to say. He's been in the UFC forever. He's been in mid-tier purgatory forever. He beats a couple guys. He'll lose to a couple guys, So, it's really tough to say what happens next with Danzig. He could potentially be cut, to be honest with you. Okay, next fight after that, Darren Crookshank beat Eve Edwards by split decision. Really weird scorecards because he had 30-27s for across the board, but he had one 30-27 going to Eves and two 30-27s going to Crookshank. I personally don't agree to that. With that, I think one of the things, and when my friends are watching it too, with Crookshank's offense, there's a lot of flash to it. That's not to say he didn't land clean strikes, because he did, but I gotta wonder if his strikes look even better because of how flashy it is. It's not a robbery by any means or anything like that. I thought Eves probably should have won. I think Eves, it looked like for 2 rounds he was getting the better of the punches, and his leg kicks also seemed a lot more effective than some of the strikes that Crookshank was throwing. As far as they should fight next, though, just more lower to mid-tier guys in the division. It's tough to say as far as Crookshank's prospects in the division. He has a really flashy style, taekwondo style. Good takedown defense, but he's also shown already to win a couple, lose a couple. He'll beat a couple guys, lose to John McDessie, and whatnot. But he's a really exciting fighter in general, and this was a fun fight. So he always has that going for him as well. Excuse me. This fight, though, with Edwards, he was the one mainly pushing forward, whereas Darren Crookshank was definitely moving backwards a lot. He had his back close to or even against the cage a lot of times. But it was still a fun fight nonetheless. With Edwards, I think he lost to Isaac Valley Flag before this, if I'm not mistaken. And then he lost to Crookshank. I always like Eve Edwards. I hope he's not cut. I think Dana White likes him, so I think he'll stay. With Crookshank, just more lower to mid-tier of the division. Alright, that's who you should fight next. Okay, next fight after that, Ed Herman beat Trevor Smith by unanimous decision. Funny thing about this fight, I thought this fight would be a lock for Ed Herman, to be perfectly honest with you. Ed Herman, from what I've seen, looks like just a better version of Trevor Smith, a better wrestler, a better Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, better striking. Wasn't really the case here, though. I think Ed Herman, though, was the better wrestler, and probably did have the better Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's just we didn't get to see too much of that, and the striking kind of went both ways, Trevor Smith would duck his head and throw a left hook, and Smith would also eat a bunch of uppercuts and right hands from Ed Herman, So it was a really fun fight, though. In the first round, they were both guys were wobbled multiple times. And quite honestly, when Trevor Smith was brought over from Strikeforce, I didn't really think much of him. He lost to Tim Kennedy by guillotine before this, and he lost to Ed Herman, but in a fight of the night performance, I don't think he's gonna get cut because it was fight of the night. And then this was legitimately a really fun fight that really showed a lot of heart from both guys. Ed Herman's just kind of stuck in mid-tier purgatory, Striking defense has never been that good historically. He's always had good wrestling and counter wrestling, strong in the clinch, and good Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's a solid fighter, just not a top fighter. Trevor Smith, You know, he should just fight more lower to mid-tier of the division. Okay, next fight after that, Jermaine Durandamy beat Julie Kedzie by split decision. You know, when I was in the predictions for this fight, I thought Kedzie would be able to take the fight to the ground more. Durandamy's really working on her takedown defense. It's looking a lot more solid. I still remember she lost like Vanessa Porto by like armbar in her first pro MMA fight, and this was Durandamy. And then I remember her performance against Jude, but I mean she would get taken down by really sloppy looking single leg takedowns. You know, against Hiroka Yamanaka, she showed a greatly improved takedown defense, and in here too, just greatly improved takedown defense as well. Durandamy has some really good knees. The fight wasn't that aesthetically pleasing, to be honest with you. It was good at best. It had a lot of lulls a lot of times. You know, like the first round, Durandamy would take Kedzie against a cage, throw some knees, you know. They're damaging for sure, but, you know, it just wasn't the most aesthetically pleasing. Kedzie would go for a takedown like in the second round, didn't do much with it. So, I really like Julie Kedzie too. That's the thing that sucks about this fight, because I'm a big fan of Invicta, and she does a commentary there, and she's so enthusiastic about it. She's a pioneer for women's mixed martial arts as well. You know, fan of her personality as well, you know. They'll probably keep her. But, you know, just... She lost to Miesha Tate before this. Now she lost to Durandamy. She definitely needs a win, you know. And there are people she can fight, like Amanda Nunes or Shayla Gaff, Rosie Sexton. Those are the ones that are coming off losses. Well, not Nunes. And she's fighting Gaff. But with Durandamy, you know, like I said, I didn't really think much of her, especially after the Bud fight. But now that she's shown improved takedown defense, her striking's on point as well. And she's really tall, you know, for the division as well. Definitely some potential with her. You know, if they can bring in Miriam Nakamoto into the UFC to fight Jermaine Durandamy, that'd be awesome. But, you know, I guess you had to go with maybe go like Carmouche. I don't think it's a good stylistic matchup for Durandamy, to be honest with you. I'm thinking especially if Amanda Nunes beats Shayla Gaff, or just the winner of Gaff versus Nunes versus Durandamy would be a really good fight. Because they're both stand-up. Those two are both stand-up fighters. So the thing with Durandamy, though, she just needs experience. Really, that's the biggest thing. But she is showing improvement. Her time at AK is definitely showing. Getting on to Facebook prelims. Justin Salas beat Aaron Riley by split decision. Don't really know it was a split decision. I picked Aaron Riley, but man, I don't know how this was a split decision. I thought it was pretty clear case for Salas. Showed some good footwork in this fight. Riley would push forward, but like Salas definitely got the better of the counter striking here. I think he managed to take down Riley as well. You know, just a good performance from Salas, you know. He's just fighting more lower to mid-tier guys in the division. With Riley, I mean, he got his jaw broken by Tony Ferguson before this. He seems like he's been in the UFC forever now. I don't know, it's 2 losses in a row for the guy. I don't even remember the fight before that, if he won or lost. Yeah, I don't know if he'll be cut or not. There's a good chance he could be. And finally, Yeltsin Meza beat John Albert by rear naked choke in the second round. Albert's cut for sure, man. This is his 4th submission loss in a row. Within, like, his last 3 losses were in the first round by submission. This one was in the second round by submission. I like John Albert, fun fighter, you know, good on the ground. almost had that triangle choke too, you know, but I think he like injured his leg or something like that. You know, but just couldn't get the win, got choked out. He's probably going to be cut. Masel at 135 looked pretty good, you know, good grappler, trains with good guys, see what happens with them, just fight more lower to mid-tier guys in the division. So that's pretty much it for my post-fight analysis for UFC on Fox 8. If you have any comments, just leave them below. That's it for MMA for you. Thank you guys very much.